know. Who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs?
Now, for those of you who were eager to see former First Lady Michelle Obama out there, and all of us were as well, there was this question. What was she going to bring to the table tonight? And it seemed like she brought pretty much everything she wanted to get off her chest over the last maybe decade. Now, I know one thing. President Barack Obama, he's a pretty good speaker, very good speaker. He's rarely had to follow a tougher act than that, his own wife. But he did his best. He did pretty damn well, too.
America's ready for a better story. We are ready for a President Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris is ready for the job. This is a person who has spent her life fighting on behalf of people who need a voice and a champion. As you heard from Michelle, Kamala was not born into privilege. She had to work for what she's got. And she actually cares about what other people are going through. She's not the neighbor running the leaf blower. She's the neighbor rushing over to help when you need a hand. Kamala Harris won't be focused on her problems. She'll be focused on yours. As president, she won't just cater to her own supporters and punish those who refuse to kiss the ring or bend the knee. She'll work on behalf of every American. That's who Kamala is. And in the White House, she will have an outstanding partner in Governor Tim Walz. We need a president who actually cares about the millions of people all across this country who wake up every single day to do the essential, often thankless work, to care for our sick, to clean our streets, to deliver our packages. We need a president who will stand up for their right to bargain for better wages and working conditions. And Kamala will be that president. Yes, she can.
It's fair to say the expectations for both President Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama were pretty high. It's also fair to say they exceeded them, not just in how they lifted up Vice President Harris and went after Donald Trump in the most cutting way, but in how they also reminded us of who we are as a country.
As much as any policy or program, I believe that's what we yearn for. A return to an America where we work together and look out for each other. A restoration of what Lincoln called, on the eve of Civil War, our bonds of affection. An America that taps what he called the better angels of our nature. That is what this election is about. And I believe that's why if we each do our part over the next 77 days, if we knock on doors, if we make phone calls, if we talk to our friends, if we listen to our neighbors, if we work like we've never worked before, if we hold firm to our convictions, we will elect Kamala Harris as the next president of the United States and Tim Walz as the next vice president of the United States. We will elect leaders up and down the ballot who will fight for the hopeful, forward-looking America we all believe in. And together, we too will build a country that is more secure and more just, more equal, and more free. So let's get to work. God bless you. And God bless the United States of America. Come on.
Joining me here on set, former RNC Chairman Michael Steele and Deputy National Security Advisor for President Obama, Ben Rhodes. And also with us from Chicago, our tireless colleagues, Joy Reid and Alex Wagner. So Joy and Alex, let me start with you guys. Yes, reporting for duty, still on duty. Alex and Joy, let me start with you, Alex. I mean, we're here, we all watched the speeches, the Obama speeches from the studio, people watching it from home. What was it like in the room? I mean, it sounded raucous, it sounded crazy when you watched it on the screen.
It sounded even more raucous and crazy in here. You know, there's a thirst for the Obamas that is even more palpable than usual, I think in part because Kamala Harris represents so many of the same themes that Obama did in terms of, you know, the moral arc of the universe bending towards justice, a multiracial America that is inclusive and optimistic. And I think people very much wanted to see a grafting of the Harris and Obama DNAs. And we certainly got that. You know, I think Michelle Obama is a very difficult act to follow. And they were very much, you know, two halves of the same whole. Michelle Obama had a ton of heart and wisdom. And I thought Barack Obama gave a deeply wise and thoughtful sort of treatise on what he believes to be the real America. I was struck, you know, by a number of things, and I talked a couple minutes ago about what I thought was so unusual and valuable in Obama's words in terms of the perspective he offered about America. But I will say, I thought Michelle Obama did a real service to the country tonight in terms of reclaiming the mantle of parenthood away from the Republican Party. J.D. Vance has spent the last month hectoring the American public about what it means to be a parent and what it means to have a Democratic Party filled with childless cat ladies. And here was America's real mom, Michelle Obama, who came out and framed the Harris candidacy in terms of motherhood, and indeed her own mother and Kamala Harris's mother. And she said at one point in her remarks, Kamala Harris is more than ready for this moment. She is one of the most qualified people ever to seek the office of presidency. She is one of the most dignified, a tribute to her mother, to my mother, and probably to your mother, too. She is the embodiment of the stories we tell ourselves about this country. It was relieving and exhilarating to have someone like that, someone who understands parenthood in a very, very different way and is generous in spirit, offer a sort of endorsement of the Harris candidacy in the context of that generosity. And I thought it was just a phenomenal moment for not just Michelle Obama and everybody else in this auditorium, but for us as a country and a Democratic Party.
I loved it, too, just the weaving of their mother stories together. Such a reminder, as you said, about how we're all connected as a country and how they're running to represent the whole country. Joy, let me ask you, I mean, you've both been to many conventions. I mean, and I've heard you talk, Joy, about kind of the interwoven stories of Kamala Harris and Barack Obama throughout the course of the last 20 years. What did you make of how he talked about her and also how he lightly referenced things like this convention hall has been good to people who have different names? You know, it was a very Barack Obama way of kind of touching on the fear you hear from some Democrats that the country isn't ready to elect a black woman.
Yeah, no, it was very poignant because, you know, as we all know, Barack Obama's family story is that his father is from Africa. His father came from somewhere else. His mother was from Kansas, a white woman from here. And so he is this blending of these worlds. And I think that's why he has such a unique perspective on us. The way he can see us and the way he can read into us, I think, comes from that perspective, because here is a black man who was raised in many ways by a white grandma and by a white family, and then who easily just transitioned into the world of, you know, black folks at Harvard and then into Chicago as an organizer. And he's been in all of these different worlds, and he brings them together. And in a very similar way, look at somebody who also has a Caribbean mom. My late mother was from Guyana. And so I really relate to the idea of a Kamala Harris, who also is a blending of worlds. Her dad is Jamaican, her mom was from India, and so she is this blended sort of package that is also uniquely American. In so many ways, they fundamentally are what America is, as is Michelle Obama, who is an African-American woman whose roots come from the enslaved in this country. And so you think about all of these people. You think about Tim Walz, right? His history. This convention has been described as a family reunion. And I think it's a perfect description of it, because what each of these speeches did tonight and what each of these speeches has done cumulatively over the course of the last 2 days is show the American family. Show it in all its diversity, show it in all of its complexity, and show it in all of its joy. And I definitely agree with Alex that there was something super special about Michelle Obama tonight. She is that sister cousin friend that you're like, if your sister cousin friend became first lady, she would be Michelle Obama, or she's our friend in our head. And she doesn't do a lot of public speaking. She doesn't appear a lot. And so she definitely doesn't do a lot of politics. So when she speaks, it's special. When she speaks, it's for a special occasion. And the fact that she was willing to come back out from living her life in her grief and describe her grief at losing her mom and say she wasn't sure she was ready to do this, but she did it for Kamala Harris. That Kamala Harris is special enough to her that she felt the need to be here and to bring us all up, even in a moment when she could be feeling down, and to give us an instruction on how to complete the mission that her husband, our former president, started. I thought it was brilliant. I thought all of the speeches worked so well and intersected together. It was a brilliant mosaic, beautifully done by the convention tonight.
I loved it. I loved it too. It was an emotional roller coaster in a very, very good way.